The evening should have been peaceful. My wife and I were sitting on our porch after dinner, watching the fireflies blink across the yard and listening to the cicadas hum. She wore her usual off-duty jeans and a t-shirt, her service pistol holstered at her side like always. Because habits born from duty don't fade just because the uniform comes off. For us, it wasn't a threat or a boast. It was a simple reality. She was trained, licensed, and armed just as she had been every day of her career. But for Karen, the HOA president who had been itching for months to find a way to crush us, it was all the excuse she needed. She came stomping across the lawn like a storm breaking, her bulk shaking with fury, her clipboard tucked under one arm as though she was about to conduct an inspection. Her shrill voice sliced through the quiet. "You can't sit here armed like some vigilante. This is my neighborhood, and I won't allow guns on these streets." Her finger jabbed toward my wife, trembling with false authority. My wife simply raised an eyebrow, calm as a mountain, her hand resting lightly on the arm of her chair. I tried to intervene, keeping my voice even. "Karen, she is legally carrying. You have no say in this matter." But Karen's face flushed crimson. She yanked out her phone, screaming into it so loudly the neighbors across the street peeked out of their windows. "Yes. Police. Come quick. There's a dangerous armed woman threatening me outside her house." She didn't even disguise the lie. She poured every ounce of venom into the words. Then she turned back with a smirk, muttering, 3 minutes and you'll be in handcuffs. Just wait." True to her promise, sirens wailed within minutes. A patrol car screeched to a stop in front of our house, lights blazing red and blue across the siding. 2 officers stepped out, scanning the scene quickly, hands ready but not yet on their weapons. Karen ran to them like a child tattling to a teacher, shrieking, "That's her. She's got a gun. Arrest her before she shoots someone." She pointed so dramatically it was almost comical, her fingers shaking inches from my wife's calm silhouette in the porch light. The officer's eyes locked on my wife. And then something shifted. Their posture straightened, their expressions softened. And within 30 seconds, they were standing in front of her not to disarm her, but to salute. Karen's smug grin melted into confusion, then horror, as my wife rose slowly, pulling her wallet from her back pocket. She flipped it open, revealing her badge: federal law enforcement, 30 years of service, tactical training officer. "Evening, gentlemen," she said, her voice calm, her authority undeniable. The officers returned the greeting with respect, addressing her by title. The entire street seemed to hold its breath. Karen's face twisted as though she had swallowed fire. No, this isn't possible. She's lying. She's dangerous. She's just pretending." Her words stumbled over each other, weak and frantic. One officer turned, his tone sharp. "Ma'am, she outranks us by several levels. You called us here under false pretenses. That's a misuse of emergency services." The neighbors murmured louder, phones raised high to capture the scene. What Karen had intended as her moment of triumph had transformed into a spectacle of her humiliation. And then came the twist. From the edge of the crowd stepped Mr. Jensen, the quiet veteran who lived 2 houses down. No one ever heard much from him beyond a polite wave. But now he held up his phone, voice steady. "I've recorded every word. From the moment Karen made the false call to when the officers arrived. This whole block deserves to know the truth." His phone played back her exact words, her lies about being threatened, her demand for immediate arrest. The crowd gasped, and Karen's knees wobbled under the weight of exposure. Her power didn't just falter that night, it shattered. Karen's voice cracked into a screech as the playback ended, her words damning her more than anything we could say. "That's not fair. You twisted it. I was protecting the community," she shouted, her eyes darting wildly between the officers and the neighbors who were now openly booing. For years she had towered over them with her clipboard and fines, wielding HOA rules like weapons. But at that moment she looked small, bloated with rage, yet powerless in the glare of truth. The officers didn't waste time. "Ma'am, you've wasted emergency resources, filed a false report, and attempted to obstruct a lawful officer in the execution of her rights," the taller one said, his tone sharp as steel. He gestured to my wife with respect. "We'll be writing this up immediately. And ma'am, if you keep shouting, you'll leave here in cuffs." Karen's jaw dropped. She opened her mouth again, but the officer raised a hand. "Enough. You've embarrassed yourself enough for one night." The crowd was buzzing, phones pointed like spotlights. For so long, neighbors had whispered in secret about the harassment, the bogus fines, the surveillance-like walks she took with her clipboard. Now they were witnessing the collapse of the tyrant who had lorded over them. My wife's calm presence, the badge shining in her hand, had flipped the entire script. The woman Karen tried to paint as a criminal was the very protector she couldn't hope to match. But the twist that truly ended her reign came days later, when the precinct received a flood of statements from neighbors. Inspired by what they had seen, people came forward with evidence of Karen's abuses, forged votes, misappropriated HOA funds, racist notes slipped into mailboxes. Some had even saved letters she'd written on fake, legal letterhead to frighten families into paying illegal fees. Each piece of paper stacked higher against her. And the more the investigators dug, the deeper the rot went. It all culminated in a town hall meeting weeks later, packed to the rafters with residents and reporters. Karen showed up, still clinging to her title, attempting to rally her remaining supporters. But when she took the microphone, her voice was drowned out by boos and shouts of "resign." Then my wife stepped forward, not in uniform, but with the quiet dignity of someone who had given her life to service. She didn't shout. She didn't need to. She simply laid down the facts, the evidence, the testimony of neighbors who had been wronged. She ended with a single line that sent chills through the room. "Authority without integrity is tyranny." Karen's face went pale. Her allies melted away. And when a petition circulated through the crowd calling for her immediate removal, the signatures filled the page in minutes. The HOA board crumbled that night, its president dethroned, its bylaws stripped of the false power they once held. The final blow came in court months later, when Karen stood trial not for a petty dispute, but for fraud and misuse of funds. The same officers she once tried to command stood in the gallery, arms folded, watching as justice caught up to her. The verdict was swift, guilty. Her sentence to years probation, fines, and permanent removal from any position of community leadership. She walked out not as a president, but as a disgraced figure shunned by the very people she thought she ruled. The neighborhood transformed in her absence. Instead of fines and threats, there were potlucks and shared gardens. Instead of fear, there was laughter. The same families she had once bullied now flourished, building something real out of the rubble she left behind. And at the center of it all was my wife, not as an enforcer of rules, but as a quiet reminder that true authority is built on service, not control. I will never forget the look on Karen's face that night when the officers saluted my wife. In 30 seconds, Her world collapsed. Not with fists or shouts, but with the undeniable power of truth and honor. So I ask you this, was Karen's punishment enough? Or should people who weaponize fear and lies against their neighbors face even harsher consequences?